Hey everyone, Tony D with another hot take on American Prudes. Who are these American Prudes that we can't seem to escape? Well, I have my theories, as always. So, if you look back at history, you look back at the temperance movement. The temperance movement was a group of mainly women, church guys, saying that we have to ban that demon alcohol. Because keep in mind the time period, we're talking the early aughts and of the 1900s, early teens. This was a time in which life sucked. Even more now than if you could possibly imagine. So what did people do? They didn't have internet. They didn't have TV. I don't even think they had radio until later. So they drank. They drank and they smoked and they hung out in bars and they got involved in all sorts of fights and it was mostly guys and they'd get involved with loose women even if they were married. And that's kind of life in the pre-electronic age, right? I mean, the average person, the best they could hope for, even in America, they worked on a farm and life sucked and they worked really hard and maybe you had a little money to go drinking with your buddies. I mean, that's about all you could hope for. So obviously things would get out of hand on occasion. And the wives, who were mainly at home, I mean, some of them had their lives ruined by their husbands who either became total alcoholics or, became violent drunks. So you can understand how the movement started. But what's really behind the movement? Was it really to save all these people? Again, it all comes down to saving people is complicated. I mean, it's complicated to intervene in somebody's marriage, even a bad one, and try to either separate them or get whoever's causing all the problems on a path that makes sense. So, everybody has their problems. So it's very complicated. And rather than do that, it's easier to blame some outside force and just say, well, that's the problem. If you got rid of that, well, that would solve all our problems. So that's kind of the thinking behind the temperance movement, right? But it's also a mentality that I think is amongst people who are insecure. And for guys who are insecure, they're insecure. They tend to be insecure about different things. They tend to be insecure about money and their job and their physical prowess and stuff that guys feel important. But guys have a more competitive atmosphere amongst their gender, and we kind of fight it out and we kind of know things. Like we're kind of more self-aware in our areas, let's say. With women, it's very complicated because on the one hand, when they're young, they tend to be very beautiful and they get a lot of attention. But as they get older, that attention goes away. And for the insecure women amongst them, and it's not all women, it's insecure women, they kind of can't deal with that. When your life begins as this grand thing where everybody just hands you everything, everybody talks to you, everybody tells you you're beautiful and interesting, and then, a few decades grind by and you're just like, hey, can I get someone over here? I need a coffee, and everybody ignores you. It kind of sucks. I mean, I could kind of see how that sucks. I don't have that problem being a guy. I didn't have people treating me like I was a goddess when I was younger. So I'm not used to that. So I'm used to kind of hey, waiter, get over here. But women have it different in that way. So some of those insecure women, and I used to call this hot girl syndrome, they lived in this world where they thought they were wonderful and great, and then something happens. And they don't want to look inward to themselves, so they look outward to the problem. Well, it's not me. I'm still wonderful and beautiful. Obviously, even though I'm 35, obviously it must be the booze. It must be rap music. It must be this or that. So I think what these movements become, like the temperance movement and like the prudes of today, is they become a way to be righteous and feel good about yourself while denigrating other people, right? So, like, you could denigrate other people and feel good about yourself, but that's kind of childish, and people kind of call it out quickly. You know, you don't need even the internet to call that out. But when you do it in this sort of sideways, well, you're stupid because you drink. I'm not calling you stupid. I'm trying to help you. I did call you stupid, but I'm trying to help you, so it's okay. So that's the mentality. And that becomes this sort of driving force. And I think what happens on the men's side, unfortunately, is, men, a lot of men are driven by just wanting to get laid. Just having a snack, having a meal, maybe getting laid, and, enjoying the silence. And when they get married or they're in a relationship, sometimes it's very contentious. And a lot of times you're dealing with your wife, and she's talking away, and she wants more of that attention, and you can only give her so much, married guys, right? I mean, you try to give her attention, but like at some point you just want to relax. And look, there's plenty of women out there who know the deal, and they kind of can sort of gauge things better, and they're not insecure in themselves, and they don't need constant attention. But there are a lot of women who need it. They need it. It's like crack to them. So if they can't get the attention from their husband, they get the attention from these groups, and their husband have a choice. Well, do I tell my wife, hey, don't bother people at bars. Don't tell them not to drink. They need to drink. Life sucks. Or do I just go, yes, dear, that's wonderful. Because, see, if I argue with her, now I'm not going to get laid, and now I got to deal with the wife and talk to her, and there's all sorts of contentiousness that I don't need in my life. But if I tell her what she's doing is wonderful, she has finally a hobby, and I get a bit of a break, and hooray. So I think some of it stems from that. Now, if you fast forward to, say, the 70s, right? Or the 60s, I would say the 60s. They were burning Beatles records and protesting against the Beatles because, it was the devil's music. It was about rock and roll. And a lot of it was religious, and there are religious guys in the mix. But again, what's their goals? Yeah, they act super pious, but they're guys. And but that's their power base. So they put on this air, and they do it. But I think a lot of them kind of know the deal, because a lot of them were probably doing that same kind of stuff, only not specifically rock and roll, drinking and having fun, whatever, on the sly, and keeping it from their wife. Like, that was the deal for a lot of guys. I had a girlfriend, I'll never forget. She said, if you cheat on me, I just don't want to know. And I was like, what the hell? What? Because she just assumed all guys cheat, and so she was trying to set up like a rule situation, very old school, that almost sort of giving me permission, like, go ahead and cheat, just make sure it's on the down low, be very discreet, which was weird to me because she was beautiful, and I had I was completely satisfied in that area, but I mean, go figure. So you have these movements that erupt, and then in the 60s you had movements, mostly religious movements, that, and this lasted all the way up until maybe the 90s or 2000s. You had the Christian Coalition and all these religious groups who would prognosticate about all sorts of things, rap music. A lot of it was music-based. A lot of it was entertainment-based and culture-based. And it was about, hey, the culture's going too far. Cut your hair. Don't dress so provocatively. Don't say these vulgar things. Don't knock religion. On and on and on and on. And we got kind of used to that pattern in America for a long time. And eventually we beat the Prudes. I mean, the Prudes were soundly defeated because culture kind of evolved past this point, and the various excesses of, say, the Prudes, and most of them were very conservative, they were sort of excised. And eventually they just all sort of died out. And we sort of maintained this weird balance in the 2000s where, we didn't really have a ton of prudes, but, and people were free mainly to do their own thing, and then gay marriage was legalized, but then something happened, and the prudes realized that, well, I can't be a prude and be like a Christian prude anymore. I can't be that old Southern girl who talks about, these things. Nobody cares. I don't get any attention. But if I'm a feminist, I can get that same attention. And there are a lot of similarities between these Christian coalition people and the temperance people and the sort of fourth wave feminists that are, mobbing Twitter and Facebook these days. For one thing, they tend not to be very presentable. So the temperance women, a lot of them were very, sour and sort of gaunt and just not attractive women, which you can imagine because the attractive women were getting all the attention and having all the fun. So during the Christian coalition days, who were these women getting all upset? A lot of them were overweight housefrows who had nothing better to do, and they were writing letters and saying things to the FCC about Howard Stern and all these horrible things. And we soundly ignored them and beat them on the field of cultural battle, if you will. These same types of people have now reemerged on the opposite side of politics. So one of these people I talked about yesterday, I believe she is, Dana Schwartz, writer of the She-Hulk, who had to put out this screed on Twitter about South Park, which went viral and everybody's kind of talking about it. And there's a lot more other than just her. There are these actresses who are touting Birds of Prey and all the wonderful woke feminist stuff in them. And there are guys in the mix too. Mostly these, as they call them, white knights. And really, most of these guys, they want to get laid. Or they want to get approval from beautiful women and beautiful people. And that's, somehow virtuous and righteous. And they feel good about themselves. It's all about that insecurity. I think these people, they can't just leave people alone. I mean, Birds of Prey is just a movie. Just put it out there and see what it does. No, we have to say it's feminist and woke and wonderful. Ewan McGregor was touting it, and the Yellow Flash has a really good video on this. He did one today, and my understanding is Ewan McGregor cheated on his wife. He's got 4 kids, and he's in the doghouse. So I don't think he gives a damn about feminism. I think he's just trying to repair his image. I think he's just like, oh man, I got caught. What am I going to do here? All right, I'll just say I'm a feminist. I'll just keep selling that until people believe it. And a lot of people do. I mean, a lot of people want to believe it. They want to believe Ewan McGregor's a good guy because he's good looking. He's an actor. They like his acting. They kind of can't separate his real life from his acting life. They kind of can't separate Ben Kenobi from Ewan McGregor cheating on his wife. They don't want Ben Kenobi to cheat on his wife. So if Jedis had wives, so that's the kind of mentality I think. I think it all stems from insecurity. So I think this She-Hulk writer is insecure about herself because she needs to denigrate South Park in order to score virtue points. Because I think from her perspective, it's not that she hates people. It's just she's trying to help you. You've been damaged by South Park. I'm trying to help you. That is a terrible thing, South Park, and I'm trying to help you, young men. And really, she's just doing more damage. I mean, when you look at the temperance movement, look how much damage it caused. So that turned into prohibition. Prohibition greatly enhanced the ability of the mafia to make money. The bootleggers exploded in Chicago and all across the country. And it caused untold misery and destruction. And actually, a lot of it did the opposite, right? It actually caused people to drink more and drink more unsafely because all of it was made in the black market and people were making bathtub gin and going blind, and it was crazy. So that is a warning, it's a warning to, it should have been a warning to the Christian coalition going after rock music and rap music. it just made the rock and rap music even worse, because you push them into making it more vulgar and horrible from your perspective, and and then you end up with like 2 Live Crew, who were just saying the most outrageous, crazy things and putting half naked girls in their videos, and it just launched a dynasty of that for a long time. What do you think is going to happen if you beat people over with feminism and tell them they're awful and horrible in games and comics and movies? I'll tell you what's going to happen. You're going to get the snapback. And the snapback is it all goes the other way. See, when these companies finally are sick of losing money, when they're finally at the point where they've lost so much credibility and money, they turn on a dime, and they will do the exact opposite. And it'll be quiet at first. It'll be like, well, what are we going to approve here in terms of greenlighting projects? Oh, well, let's greenlight all these very manly movies, and that seems good. And then people go, wait a minute, what about all the feminist stuff? Let's skip it this year. Or maybe they'll just approve one, just to have one, and they'll know they'll lose money on it, but they're cool with it. And the whole thing will just shift. And you'll get this backlash of, manly stuff. It'll be manly to the max. It'll be, stuff that really was going out of vogue before all the feminist rhetoric, but now has to come back just to piss off, the previous generation, just to piss off these high and mighty people. You're going to get, for a long time, the frat comedies were big, right? The bro frat comedies were huge. I mean, you throw a stick and they'd have one every year, and a lot of them were lame towards the end of their era, but they're going to come back. They're going to come back hard. They're going to come back so hard, bro. You won't be able to escape them. They'll be on TV. The raunch will be through the roof, and that's what you get because you've pushed it too far, and you've hurt people and denigrated them for no other reason than to prop yourself up. So, my advice to these people who think they're helping the culture or helping men and women or whatever is you gotta tap the brakes. You really have to tap the brakes and stop this hateful rhetoric. And it is very hateful. It's very hateful to see, books about white men, or, to have people pick out white men specifically and call them bad things, because it's racist. I mean, it's nothing, you substitute any other race in those sentences and you would be drummed out of polite society. That's going to happen in droves, and you're going to get this hard kernel of people who will absolutely refuse to change, and those people are in for a very sad time, I think. And there are a lot of them out there, and unfortunately, they should start changing their ways now. They should really start to think about what they're doing and embrace all people, as the hippies once did. Because all you're going to do is you're going to turn the knob the other way. And it's going to have to go, the pendulum's going to swing back hard. It's going to hit you in the face. And then we're going to have, these sluggo comedies that we had back in the day that will make, the stuff I used to watch look like nothing by comparison. The comics, the same way. I mean, we already have a taste of that with Comicsgate, right? So Comicsgate are the guys who are making real comics. They're making comics more for guys. Now, they're not super anti-woke. I mean, they kind of are in their rhetoric, but not in their comics per se. They're just really doing regular comics. But keep pushing and see what you get. So insecure people, insecure ladies in particular, and not insecure ladies. I think it's the older ladies who really should be listening to this. You really got to start talking to the younger women out there and mentoring them and saying, hey, you don't need to lecture people. You don't need to do this. You just need to live your life and like everybody. And yes, there are a few sexist guys out there. Guys are guys. Women are women. We all have our thing. And we all need to get along and work together. Anyhow, that's my rant. This is going on way too long. I'll see you next time.